reject the claim number 220012-02. This was a vote. All in favor, say A or nay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. So the motion passes. All members voted to reject the claim.
We need to reconvene. Motion to reconvene.
Motion to reconvene.
So move.
Second.
Call for the vote. Bill, you voted. Bill, voted to reconvene. We are now back in open session. Mr. Reyes, you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
6.1 invocation. Mrs. Davis, would you do us the honor?
Thank you, Mr. Marcus.
Good evening. Please bow your head if you're so inclined. Lord, we come to you in these very uncertain and trying times. Things are completely out of control all around us. So we ask you, Lord, knowing that everything is in your control, to please continue to bless and watch over our students and staff and our community and keep us safe. And Lord, please, as we make these decisions, please guide us, give us wisdom, give us patience, and give us grace. In your name we pray, amen.
Public hearing 7.1, public hearing regarding local control accountability plan of 22-23 budget presented by Sergio Mendez, Assistant Superintendent of the Educational Services, and Melissa Kilpinski, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Hall, team members. This evening, I will be going over a very brief summary of the local control accountability plan for next year. The LCAP, as it's known, has four core areas, and in previous presentations, we've gone over those four areas. Those areas which are maximize student achievement, engage students in rigorous and relevant learning, innovative parent and community involvement, and ensure safe and effective learning environments. Those areas are what drive all the actions and outcomes of the learning plan. Last year, the state allocated $7.4 million of unduplicated monies, or for monies that go towards unduplicated students. I'm sorry. Midway through the year, the state decided to increase that allocation by 15% to increase staff that would support the learning loss mitigation. So this past school year, we received an allocation of $8.2 million. Looking forward to next year, we are projected to receive an allocation of $8.6 million. And Mrs. Kopilski will go more into what those monies entail. As noted before, the monies that we receive with the LCAP are intended to address unduplicated students. Unduplicated students are English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and foster youth. And the funds must be implemented for increased and improved services. In order to make updates and changes to the LCAP, we must reach out to community and school partners. We must gather feedback throughout the school year. And this slide is a synopsis of some of that feedback that drives the decision making for this plan. So in the upper left-hand corner of the presentation, you'll see that staff that were surveyed, some of the responses that we received were that 22% of students are not motivated to learn. 95% of our staff members here that responded to the survey feel safe at school. And 42% requested professional development and social and emotional learning. So how to respond to student behavior. With regards to parents, 71% indicated that their child trusts teachers and the school staff. 77% indicated that their child feels safe at school. And then 51% felt they have a say in decision-making process in the school. And then finally, the surveyed students, 93% indicated that they try and continue to try with their coursework to improve their performance and their outcomes. 24% of our students that responded do not feel safe at school. And 83% feel close to the people at school. So these surveys, this is just a snapshot of the surveys, but these surveys help us not only evaluate the LCAP, but also design elements within it to move forward, improve these responses, and improve the. So next year's LCAP will have very similar actions. Because of the pandemic, we truly have not had a school year, where we're able to implement these actions with fidelity and see the results. We have lots of students missing school and staff missing work because of the response to the pandemic, especially early on in the school year. So the results for this past school year are not as valid as we would like them to be. So these actions, which were part of last year's LCAP, will remain. And they include promoting the college career and technical education, transportation, increasing professional development opportunities, support staff, that includes academic staff and counselors, and then our response to social emotional learning, technology, and early childhood education. So those actions will remain as funded actions throughout the plan. In addition to those actions, we have allocated funds to increase professional development. So we're going to provide more professional development, especially in the areas that were indicated by the survey, which is response to behavior. We are planning to provide additional extended day opportunities and academic excursions, so field trips, right, that are academically sound. And then we also have allocated money to incorporate 2 WIN teachers, which the WIN teachers are what we call site-based teachers. They perform the function at each site, in this case, Bryant and the middle school, where they serve as response to students that have exhausted all of the supports and need some more strategic attention. And then finally, we also plan to incorporate 5 additional intervention center coordinators. Because of the response, partly because of the surveys, we need additional eyes to help us not only monitor student behaviors, but also monitor our students. 2 changes in particular that we've also made to the plan is that we are changing from benchmark assessments to summative assessments. So we're going with summative pre-assessments at the beginning of the year, a mid-year assessment to see how far our students have progressed, and then at the end of the year, summative assessment. And then also, we are replacing the term Jumpstart in preschool to now the Universal Pre-Kindergarten program, which is going. That concludes the summary of the LCAP. You have the more detailed plan in the notes.
For 5 additional intervention center coordinators, the board would like to see 6. We would like to recommend 6, 2 for George Christian.
I'll make a note.
Add additional.
Any other questions, Board of Trustees? Thank you.
One thing to call it.
And it's not been the same. I mean, this has been an unprecedented, even budget development season cycles. Just all the different COVID dollars have been added, has made it a little bit more. The slides and themes for the May revision from the governor was the extraordinary revenues that the state of California has seen. And as you may refresh your memory, Proposition 98K14 funding gets 38 cents on the dollar of all state revenues. So that is how our funds are allocated out of the state general fund. So while that has been an extraordinary year, it is predicted that this may be the last time we'll see something as extraordinary as we have seen in the last year or two. So with inflation and all the changes that are happening now on that. On the next slide, this does show you that even at the governor's budget, the Lcf funding was 3.3 billion. And at the May revision, it jumped up to 6.1 billion. You can see the proposition 8 minimum guarantee was projected for 21, and those 3 years listed there less in January than where we're landing now in May. Just extraordinary revenues that come into the state. So since second interim, the funded COLA went from 5.07% to 6.56%. And the COLA increases when inflation impacts. 6.56% is not the full amount of inflation, though, so we'll still take that. In this governor's budget proposal, there is 13.8 billion of ongoing dollars. So some funds, 2.1 billion as an add-on to the LCFF, 10% increase, and then 2,500 per ADA for that extended learning opportunities program, which we discussed at our earlier meeting. And there's more dollars, so 13.8 in ongoing dollars, but 19.4 billion coming to school districts in one-time funds to do all the different programs that we're trying to do here. There's a $1,500 per ADA discretionary block grant. That's nice because those dollars will come with suggestions, but won't have required uses. So that'll be some good for the district. There is also some ELP infrastructure funds in there. No details are known for the use of those funds or what that does cover, except that they did highlight some music programs and arts programs. So the legislature, usually the governor and the legislature at this point have talked and have kind of formulated the plan. But at this point, the legislature met their deadline of June 15th and had a different plan. So in these 12 days before the end of June, there's a lot of discussions happening. We'll see where it lands because ultimately the governor has the final say. But the legislature wanted 6.6 billion for the LCF funding. That's higher than the governor's, and 3,000 for the ADA, the yellow program. So we'll see where that all lands. So we won't know until that end of June. So this slide just highlights the different spending proposals in the two categories: ongoing funds on the left-hand side and the one-time funds on the right-hand side. Right there at the bottom of the one-time is the $1 billion for the ELOP. And I have no idea how much dollars that would be. As we need to know. So just a reminder, the next slide is that our school funding basics, as I had mentioned even earlier, Prop 98 minimum guaranteed funding gives us that 38% of every dollar, 38 cents on the dollar. Educate our students. So a refresher on the LCFF funding formula. We start with our base grant amount, and the base grant is from the prior year, where we have a base grant and have a COLA, that becomes the new base grant on the next slide, please. And each grade span has a different base grant amount. After that, the COLA is added to the base grant, and that becomes the new base grant. On top of that, then we have two grade span adjustments, up to K3 and our U12 categories. And then after that, when the releases for 90% unduplicated, the district receives both the supplemental and concentration funds based on our duplicated percent, and at 90% we receive 90% of what's at that level. And then on the very top is that additional add-on, and you have yet to see how much. As a reminder, ADA times the dollars in the funding formula equal our total revenues, and that's our biggest pot of revenues. So looking at enrollment, here's an historical from 2013-14 all the way through present and projected next 2 years. So you can see that the blue line is our funding. So enrollment is in the orange, ADA is in the red, and then somewhere in the middle all along this way. It's not beneficial to be on the down side of this funding, which is where we're at. And you can see that big jump, that big dip in the red, that was last year. Our ADA for this current year, 2022, where our ADA fell from what is historically should have been historically about 2130, and it came in at 2038, so nearly 100 months. This is the formula again, and we'll look next at the second component, which is so what has increased that part of the funding is the funded COLA, 6.56% of 2023, moving on to 2024. Another add-on that is in this budget is a transitional kinder add-on, beginning in and continuing on from this fiscal year 22-23 for our TK program. There's $2,813 per ADA TK program. This equates to about $140,000 for us next year. Unless we want more TK hits.
How many?
51 units. Because the governor has the TK transition. So if we look at the specific dollars, the 21-22 base grant for ADA is shown on the first line. Next line has the 6.56% COLA and the dollar amount that is for each of those categories. This chart does show what additional add-on at 2.1 billion represents the 2.1 billion proposed by the governor on the additional LCFF investment there. For example, $266 per ADA for the K3. That brings us to the new 22-23 base rent per ADA. Should the governor pass that now? Our grade span adjustment is applied for K3 and 9-12. That's our adjusted base rent for all categories. On top of that's the 20% supplemental grant, and on top of that is the 65% concentration for the dollars. So without the add-on, this chart shows us that we would be receiving average per ADA funding of 13,986, and we'll multiply that by the governor's ADA mitigation calculation, where we'll average our 3 prior years. Averaging our 3 prior years will be funded on 2180 ADA, and that would net to $30.6 million. So our total funding for 22-23, the 3-year average and the 2180 $6188 from prior year is good. There's still a 15% concentration grant that's only for services to students, personal for student services to students. And then we land at the $30,600,000 mark, which is an increase from our prior year of $1 million. Moving on into 23-24, our COLA is a little bit less, but still an increase from the prior base year COLA. ADA drops 31. This is saying that our enrollment is going to remain the same. So this is saying that we're going to have at least what we have this year moving into 23-24. And so this calculation brings in another $1 million over prior year. As long as the COLA is funded. So that caveat out. And then in 24-25, 4.2 COLA. We're kind of catching up to that 3-year average. This one, we average 3 years, and each year is about the same as the last year. What the a very similar amount. So we're at 2154, and it's a 1.2 increase over the prior year. So all that looks good. That is, I wouldn't say flat funding, but as you know, the COLA is to maintain our programs from year to year, so that we can do the same things. Other revenues in the works are, as I said, that discretionary block grant proposed by the governor, $1,500 per ADA. It would bring in $3 million for the district, just in one-time dollars for 22-23. Moving on to the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, there's a proposal from the governor for $2,500 per ADA. This program is within that equates to $2.7 million. This is been incorporated into my projections. We have already been receiving ELOP dollars, so it's definitely an ongoing program that the governor's going to fund and continue to be a priority. So along the lines of the ELOP program, here's the slide on the infrastructure funds. So $1 billion for infrastructure funds, and we have yet to see what that amount will be for the district and what the uses are. Although it does say 75% of grant funds must be used for arts education programs. Okay, the priority has been also for universal transitional kindergarten. So in 22-23, we actually received funding for all 4-year-olds whose 5th birthday occurs between September 2nd and February 2nd. So all those kiddos that that turn 5 by that date, we get the ADA for them in school. 23-24, the dates moved up to April and June, and then we're at full implementation in 24-25. The next graphic just kind of gives you a little visual how we're getting funding for all those kiddos. But then when the kiddos turn 5 in February through May, we start receiving ADA for those. Right up when they turn 5, we'll get the funding. It just won't be the full year. So how many one-time dollars do we have of our COVID dollars remaining? Here's the estimated amounts in each of the categories. So 3, which we can still use on facilities, a little less restrictive, is 3.7. The ELOG, not to be confused with the ELOP, this is the ELOP, same thing, expanded learning opportunities, but this is the grant dollars. There's 100,000 left there. In-person instruction, 140,000. Learning loss mitigation, which is part of ESSER, is 2.22 million, and then a small amount left in our SB 117. That was that very first pot of money we got, at 39,000. So the dates for when those COVID dollars expire, we should be on track to expend all the dollars by their deadline. And here is an overview of our general fund revenue budget. I've included the 21-22 estimated actuals in the first column. So what I believe will happen when we close the books for this year. It's just an estimate at this time, but it's my best estimate. And then right next to it is our 22-23 budget. Below, I've indicated our COVID one-time dollars, what has been spent and what is remaining. You can see of the 17.4 million. we've spent 10.3, and there's 6.4 remaining. Here's a chart. The blue is our unrestricted dollars, and the yellow is our restricted dollars. The little checkerboard is the COVID funds. So expenses, our budget has revenues, but we have to spend those dollars on something. So 82% of our budget is devoted to people. And the news to me was that the increase in minimum wage was triggered by the increasing costs due to inflation. So we arrived at $15 an hour. We're not done, quite done yet. It'll be $15.50 for all workers effective January 1st. And on the next page, it's not going to stop there. Here's a prediction, a projection from School Services of California of where it will continue to go. The current condition of the way things are. As far as the benefits go for our salary folks, certificated this next year will be at 22.66% and classified at 35.13%. And you can see what it is for the out years. Our retirees in 22-23 will incur a cost of $107,000. So that's been added to the budget. And just a reminder, the cost of goods and services are projected to increase more dramatically in the near term. As you are all aware. Yes. So here is the general fund expenditures. Again, like the revenues, there are 21-22 estimated actuals on the left, and then the proposed 22-23 budget. Each of those different categories. This is just a chart showing estimated actuals in the orange and our budget in the blue. You might wonder why the budgeted number is lower than the estimated actuals, and that's because we've spent a significant amount of certificated salaries with COVID dollars. We don't have those COVID dollars in this next year quite as much. So that's the part that's the step-in column is in there. All the advances for the employees is incorporated into there. There's just not that significant amount of one-time dollars budgeted in there because we don't have the funds for it anymore. So looking at the multi-year projections, again, my projection of the estimated actuals is in the first column. Moving on into our adopted budget is in the second column. And you can see the two out years, 23, 24, and 24, 25. This first slide is the worst case scenario. This is not knowing what the governor will land on for the add-on and not knowing if there's the one-time dollars and not incorporating any of the infrastructure needs or any of the other one-time dollars in there. So let's take a look where if we were only to receive the $3 million one-time dollars, this has been incorporated. So in 22-23, we received the $3 million one-time dollars. And you can see this is a much healthier multi-year projection, and we'll be able to maintain our 16%, whereas we weren't. That wasn't going to be the case without the one-time dollars. But then pretty much knowing that the add-on will be a done deal, that would be the next slide in version 2. So that adds the $3 million and the additional add-on, which is approximately $1 million on top of what was projected before. So that gives us our best case scenario, and we'll have to just see when the governor passes his budget where it lands. But by the time we bring this back at June 30th, we might know. So then they can make those adjustments. Revenues incorporated in here, of which I will definitely call out the changes from what's been shared here tonight. So another component of the budget hearing is to share the balances in excess of minimum reserve requirements. So this is a document that goes to the county office and needs to be incorporated with our budget, and it calls out of the dollars that are in our fund balance what what those are called out for, what those are earmarked for. So this chart shows. And lists those for you. We don't have just the general fund, we have quite a few other funds. Do revenues coming into the other funds. First slide, and then the expenditures going out of those funds. And balance. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to.
Board have any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Kopinski. Information discussional items, 8.1 first reading, BP 5121 grades evaluation of student achievement.
So this would allow our Marks Elementary to provide grades for standard base. So we're looking to provide for our students to receive grades from 3rd grade to 5th grade, rather than a split through the campus, and it creates quite a bit of issues with alignment.
All reports, 9.1 superintendent report.
Board again. Starting with our enrollment data, so we ended the year with the enrollment at May 2213. Breakdown per site. COVID district report. So we, in terms of students, had a total of 413 total incidences with an uptick in the last month, going from 5 to 22 student positives and 140 students sent home with symptoms by health services. Slight intake in our staff data since April 1st with 4 positives in May. We will be releasing our COVID plan for parents starting July 1, so we're transparent with what our procedures and policies are related. We're continuing to test. We're continuing to test at the PDC on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock for all of our students and our staff. Attendance data. So we ended the year with our attendance percentage of 90.7, chronic absenteeism at 20.1. So definitely be an area of focus going into our next school year. Suspension and expulsion data. In May, we ended the year with 10 suspensions and 0 expulsions. Academic and social emotional, ending the year with 794 opportunities for our admin team. We're in classrooms conducting instructional walkthroughs. Some academic highlights. We had summer school that started this week. District completed the CAS testing for 3rd grade and 11th grade. We should be getting our results usually late June, early July. Last week, one of the needs on our Lcf survey was additional professional development. We offered a professional development week the last week of, or this past week. We had 100 team members attend at least one session of the district's professional development. So that was a great turnout. Next session is July 26th through August 3rd. So we're hoping to have that same turnout. 126 out of 127 high school seniors graduated. It was a great graduation, and the team did a wonderful job. Dpol Staff Appreciation Week was in May, and we recognized 120 employees with a combined service of 1,643 years. So that was a neat stat that I had to share. Student activities, end of the year, we always have some fun activities, and it's great to see students engaged in all campuses, enjoying themselves, having fun with their peers. I didn't have enough room to put all the pictures, but just some of the DPE had a water day the last day of school. We have George Christian, and families seem to really appreciate the opportunity to come out, film, take pictures, and enjoy each other. Marks Elementary Open House was a hit, probably one of the most attended we've had in years.
Sorry, Danny, I had a highlight to Danny. Danny, Mr. Perez, over there, as you can see, still has a bald head, let the students shave his head for an incentive. And on the bottom, we have our preschool staff who, instead of a graduation this year, had a recital. So they got to sing songs and thank you for those that attended. It was definitely a great opportunity to see our wives. And then we have Dos Palace High School graduation, which pretty cool picture of our kids celebrating at the end of the graduation. District Views, upcoming events, so the aquatics program has started and we have quite a bit of kids out swimming and families out swimming. So that was great to bring back. We're starting a new summer track program, which will, through our ELOP program, provide our community the opportunity to train, compete, get some guidance, and we have some practicing times that we'll have some coaches out there helping and competitions. And then we're going to keep hammering this in, TK registration. So if your child turns 5 between those dates, please come see us. We'll help you and support you in enrolling. Shout outs for some of the shout outs for the month. Marks Elementary Open House. DP Awards Show had a great turnout with over 600 parents attending. Dos Palace High School FFA banquet was a fun night, great opportunity for our students, showing off their successes for the year. Bryant Middle School softball team won the LB Creekside tournament. BMS participated in Peace for Patients, and I can't say enough that thank our staff enough for the end of the year activities. From going from truly having no activities at all to let's get it back together, let's remember what this looks like, working together as a team and being organized for our events was a huge accomplishment. So I appreciate it. Questions or comments?
9.2, report from board members. Ms. Austin. Mr. Van Worth. Mr. Morales had nothing to report. Ms. Davis.
The end of the year was great. It's always my favorite because, as Superintendent Grijalva said, it shows you wise. It was a rough start, obviously, with COVID and everything, and the kids at the end of the year were just so happy and so excited, and it felt normal. All the graduations were fantastic. The kids so excited. Kind of feel a little bit bad for them because they don't really know what's on the other side, but they were having a good day. So that was good. I drove by when you're having a little BMX thing and all those kids and everyone who was out there so excited, so engaged. So thank you for that. Mrs. Crivelli, I believe that GC had their first ever senior breakfast, and I heard a lot of positives about that. I did not get to attend as much as I normally would the last couple of weeks of school because I had the flu, but thank you guys again for everything. And I hope the days, because it's not really summer vacation anymore, but the days that you have to reset and recover, that you enjoy doing those. Thank you.
Ms. Reyes.
Thanks.
All right. Communication, audience comment. 10.1, public concerns will be held by the board at this time. However, they will not be discussed. Policy 9323 limits individual presentation to 3 minutes. The president may exceed the time under certain circumstances. This is the opportunity for members of the public to focus on issues of importance to the district's purpose of education. Under board policy, this time may not be used to present any derogatory information of a personal nature on any employee. Members of the public who wish to address the board must speak from the podium and identify themselves. Let the record reflect that there is no one. Okay, 11.1. The consent calendar represents routine items acted upon in one motion by roll call vote. The recommendation of the is for adoption unless otherwise specified. Any item can be removed for discussion upon request. Contract agreement proposal. 11.2 STEM scopes. Oh, sorry. Supposed to take an action there, but we don't. Mrs. Davis, do I continue?
Yes, you're gonna
Go all the way to 11.10.
11.2
All the way to 11.11.
to 11.12.
All the way 11:12.
Or
11.12. All right, let's do this. 11.2 STEM scopes, TK through 3, and 9 through 12, curriculum resources. Borderland, line-wise web filter renewal. 11.4, Sophos firewall renewal. 11.5, Teachers College of San Joaquin, Impact Intern Program Agreement. 11.6, 2022-2023 FFA calendars of events. 11.7, Merced Legal Services Authority Agreement. 11.8, 2022 to 2023 contract for media services with the Merced County Office of Education. 11.9, Pristine Rehab Contract, non-public authority, non-public agency SELPA contract. 11.10, MCOE Agreement for Business Services, Department of Information Technology Services. 11.11, Board meeting minutes of 5/19/22 regular board meeting and 6/9 of 22 special board meeting. Warrants and payroll. 11.12, warrants and payroll.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Davis,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Van Worth. Call for the vote. Motion passes. 12.1, Resolution 21-22-19 for temporary interfund cash borrowing.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Davis,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Van Worth. Call for the vote. Motion passes. 12.2, 2022-2023 student handbooks.
Mr. Morales, I move that we take DPE, Marks Elementary and Bryant Middle School as one motion, and Dos Palos High School and George Christian in separate motions.
I'll second that.
Mr. Van Worth seconds that. Okay, so we are separating DPE, Marks Elementary, and
Bryant as one motion.
Bryant as one motion.
Dos Palos High School and George Christian as two separate motions.
George Christian has two separate motions.
You want
All right.
Totally, yes. DPE, Marks and Bryant, one. Dos Palos High School, number 2 on its own. George Christian, number 3 on its own.
Mr. Hernandez, this will be
The students verbally.
verbally,
So the
correct?
first one, if I can get a motion
All right.
for,
If I can get a motion for DPE, Marks Elementary School, and Bryant.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Davis, seconded by Mrs. Austin. We're going to call for the vote. Mrs. Austin? Yes. Mr. Van Worth?
Yes.
Mr. Morales, yes. Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Reyes?
yes.
Yes. Motion passes for Dos Palos Elementary, March Elementary, and Bryant Middle School handbook. All right, Dos Palos High School. Yes, if there's any questions in regards to Dos Palos High School handbook?
Need a motion.
Motion for that.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Davis,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Van Worth.
I have questions.
All right, any questions?
Whomever, Mrs. Castillo or Mrs. Verhoeven.
Good evening. Page 20. Okay. Do you mind,
Vehicles,
I'm sorry, do you mind 1 second? Do you mind pulling up so we everyone can see what?
Number 7. Use appropriate speed 25 miles per hour or less near schools as well as while in the parking lot. Unsafe driving will require a parent meeting and possible loss of lunch pass in a meeting with campus SRO. Can we actually enforce that on something that's being done on a public street?
As far as officer, if I was meeting with them for that, yes, absolutely.
I mean, as far as us just taking a privilege away that of something they're doing on a public street. Like, so if I have little Johnny's dad call me and say, how can you take my son's lunch pass away for something he's doing on a public street? Can we, is this something that we legally, lawfully have the authority to do?
It's my understanding of the way it was written, so that way if they're peeling out of our student parking lot and they're exceeding an excessive speed, then yes. we can
Okay,
take
I'll be 100% the parking lot, because that's our property, school property. The kids are now on our property, but like, if they take a whole shot down Blossom, they're not if they take a whole shot coming out of the senior parking lot, gray area. But if they take a whole shot, off the senior patio, which has been done, our area. But if they are just rolling down Blossom, and and that's totally my example, I don't know that we can say you're going to lose your lunch pass because of something you did on a public street.
can take it out. This has been in the Dpol Sexual Handbook for years, but if you'd like us to take it out, we can absolutely take it out.
So you want, so what we're hearing is the board would like to take out the parking
This,
or the school, the street, but not the parking lot.
this isn't the board. I can only speak. I don't want to assume to speak for my colleagues. These are the questions that I have with regard to the handbook. I just don't know that we could.
So we're gonna explore ed code. a little bit more.
From what I read, number 7, use of appropriate speed 25 miles per hour or less near schools. We might want to define that and make sure that we have authority.
Because the speed limit's 25 anyway. All I'm saying is, can we punish a student by taking their lunch pass away for something they're doing on a public street?
So we're talking in front of the high school, the side,
Only would
what
be-
surrounds the high school,
Would
or
be the to and from ed code, safe, ensuring safe to and from school.
Reckless behavior could have an access to school function.
Okay,
So we'll explore.
I just want clarification.
You're correct in thinking that we don't want to define necessarily the miles per hour, 25, but conduct in and around school that has an access to school can be disciplined by school officials.
Okay,
So we could reword it.
like I said, I just don't want little Johnny's dad to call and say, what do you think you're doing? He was on Almond. That's not your, that's a city
That's different. Judge.
city roadway.
Yes.
So, Mrs. Davis, would you like us to reword it, bring it back, or would you like it stricken?
I think that obviously you need to leave in there, you can't be taking, however you want to write it, full shots off the senior patio or in the parking lot or.
may I say that I like the way Mr. Mendez worded it.
We could reword it to reflect reckless behavior in and around school, to include, like, if it has an access to school.
Excluding the weekends.
Board, okay with that?
24. Lunch passes. So when we fill out our packet as a parent, it is my understanding that I have the right to say my student is not allowed to go off campus.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it says here, at certain times throughout the year and at the discretion of school administration, all students may be allowed off campus without a pass.
Right.
So maybe we need to,
With exception of parents not allowed.
because I'm saying, if I don't want my student off campus and we have an incentive that a student, the students have at 100% attendance or whatever it may be, but I don't want my student off campus. And my student goes off campus and gets in a car with Mrs. Arrayas' student and something happens, that is totally 100% our responsibility because we allowed that student to go off campus for an incentive that their parent did not agree to.
Okay, we can make those changes.
Which that's what it's gonna include if you're eligible.
So if you're ineligible,
Not privileged.
do you want to ask that? You want me to ask that?
No, I mean, is that what is gonna go in this one too?
So if you're ineligible
Yeah, I
for
guess I should-
discipline or grades
Non-privileged.
or something, if you're non-privileged, do you get to go off campus too?
Yes, lunch pass and non-privileged are not tied together. They're two separate entities.
That's on the same page.
So just to clarify, Mrs. Davis, if, depending on what the discipline is, sometimes it's non-privileged along with lunch and lost pass, depending on what the violation was that they trouble for.
Okay. So if a student is caught using another student's lunch pass, I'm sorry, this is page 60, both students may lose their lunch pass. So up here it says you can't use someone else's lunch pass because you're gonna lose your privilege, but then down here it says may. What's the,
May is this, so we say will, we paint ourselves into a corner. If there's a extenuating circumstance, you need some wiggle room, so you haven't backed yourself into a corner.
They
If-
stole it out of somebody's binder. They stole it out of a locker.
That's always
Found it
gonna
on
be
the
the
ground.
story.
okay, thank you.
There any other questions in regards to handbook? Mr.
Yeah,
Van Wert?
I have a question with the teams and coaches section and I think it falls under personnel, so it's going to be something we have to talk about.
Is that in the handbook?
It's in the handbook. It's under the teams and coaches assignments.
What page are you referring to, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know what page it is, but it's called teams and coaches assignments under the personnel section in your handbook. I don't think we could really discuss it in this forum, so. My other recommendation is that I really think that the school handbook needs to come before the board, before the coaches handbook. You know what I'm saying? So that make sure that it's completely meshes and goes together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question? Yeah, right. I'm questioning some of the assignments there.
Page 20, sorry.
Would we like to table the vote?
Then we need to vote on it.
We have to vote now.
We have to vote on it? Okay.
We can entertain another motion to table it though.
Say that again.
We can entertain another motion to table it.
We can entertain a motion to table this and then vote.
If there's a motion to table the high school. We can vote on that.
It appears that there are some corrections needed to the Dos Palace High School handbook. I would like to make a motion to table the vote to our next board meeting.
In a second.
Can I call for a vote?
Is there a second to that? Mrs. Austin, second. Call for the vote
To table.
to table, make the corrections, and then vote.
Table it to another date. The next board meeting.
This will be a verbal vote.
Yes, table it to the next board meeting.
Mrs. Austin? Yes. Mr. Van Wert?
No.
Mr. Moraz? Yes.
No.
No.
Mr. Reyes, the no. Motion does not pass. So we're going to vote on the Dos Palace High School handbook. Is there a motion?
We already made.
Already made. Okay. Let's go to the vote.
This is verbal as well.
It's going to be verbal as
because we
well.
Split it in three.
Mrs. Austin? No. Mr. Van Wert,
No.
Mr. Moraz, no.
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 All right. Next item is for George Christian Handbook.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Davis, seconded by Mr. Van Worth. Is there questions in regards to the George Christian High School Handbook?
I'm sorry. Good evening. Page 12.
Yes, ma'am.
Attendance.
Yes, ma'am.
Students missing more than 10% of the semester will not be allowed to transfer back to the high school. So assuming rough math, there's 180 education, 180 days of education, 90 each semester, right? So 10% is 9 days, right? Probably more so in the first semester than the second, because there's, okay. Step 4, after 10th unexcused absent, student may be notified of transfer denial to comprehensive site. So is it the percentage or is it the days? Because the way this reads up here, it is stated very clearly that if you miss 10%, you cannot go back. But down here, you might get to go back.
Okay, so this is an oversight. I'm gonna be very honest with you. The way this was written was very, very strict, the last couple school years. You'll see everything in red has been added this year. So you see step 4, notice the unexcused in red was absent and the maybe, I need to fix that as well, I apologize, was also added. This was written in accordance, the 10% part, because Dos Palace High School also had in their handbook, if you missed 10% of your days at George Christian, you could not transfer back. I should have put a may in there. You know, if you miss 10%, you may not be able to allow to transfer back to the high school. But since we do have step 4 that says after the 10th absence, which is roughly 10% depending on the semester, students may be notified that transfer denial to comprehensive sites. So that is that was an oversight, and I apologize.
And the may is to give us what wiggle room?
It was
assuming.
yes, it was yes. The way that the handbook was written was pretty cut and dry, and we are learning that not all situations are cut and dry. And we've also explored some ed code options, and if you'll look in the beginning of the handbook, you'll see the difference now between voluntary and involuntary and whatnot. So that also affects.
To ensure that the team at the SARB panel
Yes.
can write a contract.
Yes. So that, like I said, was an oversight. I will completely fix that, and I apologize.
No problem. Thank you.
I got a question too.
Yes.
I understand all the stuff that's in red is new, but when a student who voluntarily went to Westside and wants to go back, and they go through this transfer panel, if they are going to still transfer back because it's parents' decision, after the panel has recommended that they do not, will there be a plan in place so that they can do whatever they need to do to graduate from the high school? Because, you know, we were all tired of going back first semester, not doing anything, and then coming back to graduate from Westside. The cycle just, it's, I understand it's tradition, but that all traditions are not meant to be continued.
Yeah.
Will there be something in place to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do?
From the high school?
From at the transfer panel.
At the oh yes,
Yeah.
at the transfer panel. So when we have our transfer panel, we come together and we say, you know,
Who's we? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So it's representative from the high school and usually a counselor, but obviously it gets busy, but it's always a representative or two from the high school, and then myself, and then a Westside teacher. And we sit and we talk about the student and how they do, and you know, their strengths and how we think they're gonna do and some issues they may face to kind of prepare the high school for, hey, this kid really tries, but when they get frustrated, they kind of shut down, or, you know, just to kind of introduce the students. So at the transfer panel, especially when we are really worried about a student going back, then the high school is able, and we at the panel are able to recommend what we would like to see as safeguards, and then the high school is able to implement those safeguards. We had a student that went back the beginning of the year. We were really worried about how she would do over there. She actually ended up doing fantastic in graduating. We're very proud of her. But at that transfer panel, we were able to shed light on what we were worried about. So they were able to create a check-in, check-out, I believe, with her to make sure that they were following.
So if it's a attendance issue because of what the ed code says and what
Voluntary.
Ms. Austin alluded to, so even if I have had an attendance issue at George Christian, but I voluntarily went out there, I get to go back. So if
Now,
pending what the panel says. So
Yeah.
if the panel says
No
I can
panel.
go back,
No,
So
that was gonna be my second question.
yeah,
If they have the attendance issues that, you know, or behavior issues, how often are those SARB hearings in place so that you can change it from a voluntary to an involuntary?
so SARB happens once a month. SARBing alternative education students, alternative ed students is a little more tricky due to hours and whatnot. However, I can do a attendance, like in-house, kind of like a behavior contract, you know, but more for attendance. I can still do SART team meetings and go on from there. This voluntary, involuntary change was recently implemented in this book. So we are going to be growing with that process in the next school year.
and then ed code, if they violated any of the ed code or were a threat to any campus, then that would go from voluntary to involuntary.
Yes.
so this applies moving forward, but does not apply to any students that completed this school year. Okay. So they basically can go back to the high school and it's like having a clean slate.
Pending transfer panel.
Voluntary transfer.
Voluntary,
Involuntary transfers. No.
but voluntary with these new rules, because it was voluntary, they can
The
still.
voluntary transfer
Go
can
back?
go back to the high school at the beginning of the year, regardless of our recommendation, unless we turn that student becomes involuntary through our SAR process or violating ed code and you're on a behavior contract.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not asking my question clearly. So if there's a student who has missed an excessive amount of days and they, in the 21-22 school year, voluntarily went to George Christian, they can go ahead and voluntarily go back to the high school, even though they did not meet the requirements for the 21-22 school year, if the panel says it's okay, or that doesn't count for them, we're starting this fresh and moving forward.
So we need to follow ed code. What ed code states is that, because
They
ed
can
code
go
trumps
back.
all of our handbooks, correct?
And attendance always resets every year.
I know it resets every year, I'm just a little confused. If you've missed 40 days, then you can go back and.
Yes, and it's not our function. As Mr. Holland mentioned, it's California Ed Code. That's the student right. They have the opportunity voluntarily to go back and forth.
Since we've come back, have we had SAR panels?
Yes, yes, we have. It is on the administration and attendance clerks to turn into George Christian, those students that fall in the SARP category.
And the DA's office is on
Oh,
board
yes,
now?
absolutely. I'm working with Andrea and.
TAs, child welfare's on there.
Actually, unfortunately, welfare has not been able to send a single person for our SARB this year because they said they were very overloaded. But we do have, the DA's office does.
DA investigator.
Investigator, thank you. Sorry, DA investigator does come. But we've had a hard time getting.
So we didn't replace Nicole when she left then. Nicole Borba was our last.
Yeah, her name escapes right now, but I do have emails, like I remind them that they're coming up and I get an email back that's like, sorry, we have nobody available to attend.
Okay.
I guess maybe Mr. Mendez, this goes to you. So as we have these students, and you alluded to one that young lady that went back, she did fantastic, but you give a little extra look-see. So if we have a student that has an truancy issue and we are aware of this, are we going to have a little look-see? Because we know, other than the SARB, I understand if you get there, but I don't want them to get there. I don't want them, because it was voluntary, okay, I got to go back and start over, but what are we going to do, like this young lady that you alluded to make sure that we don't get there to where, because there is a history of
Yes.
problems.
So part of our design was that we didn't have enough individual learning plans for students going to George Christian or going back to the comprehensive high school. So we have set up where we're going to increase that with our counseling staff. So all students that were transferred out, whether it's voluntarily or transferred back in, will have, as part of the panel process, an individualized learning plan, just like the young lady had, to make sure that we are more strategic in monitoring not only their behavior, but their attendance.
And that would be, it's called check in, check out, where you kind of put them on a counselor's like rotation roster, if you will, and the counselor knows. to-
Radar.
Yeah,
Well, check-in, check-out's part of it.
Part of it, that's
Also-
just-
Also increasing the contacts with the parents, also increasing the conferences. All those things are gonna be more frequent because the students are demonstrating that they're at risk when they're either transferring out or transferring back in.
They're no longer a tier 1 student receiving all of the interventions. Now they've become tier 2 or possibly tier 3 students. So they receive those types of.
And we refine some of the elements of our system to improve that, to improve the contacts, to improve the home visits. We leverage the probation department to help us with home visits before it becomes a chronic absenteeism.
That's what I was gonna ask, if the SROs are also on board with this, as far as doing home,
we're
who's
trying to
doing the
use
home visits?
probation to do home visits.
To keep our SROs on our school
Restaurants on
sites.
campus.
So we've added some layers to make sure that we have more monitoring in place for the students going to George Christian and coming back to our comprehensive.
Probation has a different
Do we have a
means of
contract with
getting to the
probation?
school than the
Yeah.
SROs.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We're in agreement with the Merced County Probation Office because they have a grant that supports rural communities with attendance.
Okay.
So they've assigned 2 officers. We've been working with those 2 officers, and we actually have a plan to increase their frequency.
But can probation do the same as the SRO if they're not going, like, help them along?
Yes, yes, but we've designed this so that probation is before it becomes chronic. So they're helping us with the reinforcement of, hey, you're at 7, let's say. If we don't want it to get to 12 plus.
So would you ever involve the SRO in home visits after, if it continues after probation going?
If our admin needed to go out. We've been trying to get keep SROs on campuses for safety. And the fights and whatnot.
I think admin going out is a safety issue
No, if
also.
admin went out, then SROs could go with them, but we've been trying to keep our SROs on our school sites.
I just don't think that that's something admin should be doing. I think that's a safety. I wouldn't want you going by yourself, but I know you would be willing, but.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
We voted to vote on it or table it? Hold on.
How you guys want to do it? Want to make a motion to table or vote? We voted on the last
I
one.
don't know. Well, President.
There are some corrections that need to be made to this handbook as well. Being that we voted on the Dos Palace High School handbook, I'm going to call for the vote on this one. If there's corrections that need to be made, we'll make them in our next board meeting. We'll vote again, but I'm calling for the vote now. Mrs. Austin? No. Mr. Van Worth? No. Mr. Marazza? No. Mrs. Davis?
No.
Mrs. Ayers?
No.
No. All right. Let's see, that puts us 12.3 solar side, 1 ES LLC amendment number 2. Presented by Melissa Kilpinski, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. Mrs. Kilpinski. Come on down.
Okay, so Terra Verde's been working on our behalf because we contracted with them to be our asset manager with our solar. We're expecting a report quarterly, monthly. Still been communicating with them to get that. They're still putting that in. I know it's our priority. They said definitely quarterly. So that will be not tonight. But one thing they did work on our behalf for was they looked over all of our contracts and everything and realized that there was an incorrect rate. So they've, as the attachment that's seen there is the agreement for that rate to be corrected, and they'll work on our behalf to remove any difference between the PPA rate and the new PPA rate. So once this is in place and signed by the district, they'll move forward with that, and that will be incorporated to our savings, our energy savings, and works in our benefit. This is more money for the district.
Do I have a motion? Moved by Mrs. Davis, seconded by Mr. Mraz. Call for the vote. Motion passes. 12.5, extra pay for extra duty, Bryant Middle School classroom relocations.
Mr. Murray, we have 12.4.
Oh, 12.4, my apologies. 12.4, adoption, March 22nd, policy updates.
With that, I recommend adopting our March policy updates.
Motion and a second first.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Davis, second by Mr. Van Worth. Call for the vote. And the motion passes. 12.5, extra pay for extra duty, Bryant Middle School classroom relocations.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Van Worth, second by Mrs. Davis.
So we are working on reconfiguring Bryant Middle School to create a 6th grade wing to move with transitioning from 6th grade and then 7th and 8th.
Have one of those little fans like was on Facebook that had all the teacher stuff hanging off
Yeah.
the moving class.
That's what we need, right?
Maybe your dump truck, Matt.
Is there any questions by the board? Call for the vote. And the motion passes. 12.5, extra pay. Oh, good God, boy, come on. I need to get my glasses. I apologize. 12.6, extra pay for extra duty bus driver training.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Davis,
Second.
second by Mrs. Austin.
So previous board meetings, we discussed and approved a training for our staff to drive buses. So this is the extra pay for extra duty for the trainer, along with the new secretary,
So we're offering in-house training to any staff who
any
wishes.
staff members,
Board members.
or board members.
Do we have any bikes? Like, is there people interested?
How many in-house did you have? 3? Yeah.
I used to have my bus driving license.
I
I drove bus. I drove bus for this
We
school
need you
district.
on
You drove
Route
for Greyhound, though.
4.
I drove bus for the school district before.
We need you on Route 3 and 4. Let's go.
Oh,
Can't do
Lord.
it, but have a bad knee on the right
I
side.
drive way too
Yeah.
fast.
All right. Any questions by the board? Call for the vote. Mr. Van Worth. And the motion passes. 12.7, 2022, 2023 ASB fundraisers. there a
So
motion? Moved by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Moraz.
So this is list of ASB fundraisers for the 22-23 school year. Recommend approval.
Any questions by the board? Call for the vote. Motion passes.
I didn't realize decaf this.
I think we're just having a little bit of lag. I see Mr. Van Wert clicking and clicking over there, it's just lagging. 13.1, classified staff. Moved by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Moraz. Mrs. Grijalva, anything? You got?
We have one new, not even a new employee, one employee that's going to be going from our business department to transportation secretary, and we're
Are
excited.
we gonna replace her for the ASB part of that district office job, or
We'll be evaluating the
be
need.
evaluated?
We'll evaluate the need and then go from there.
Any questions by the board?
Want to make sure you're approving this first, Mr. Bama.
That's a call for the vote. Now she'll answer your question. 13.2, summer interns.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Davis, seconded by Mrs. Austin.
So this is our first year with a summer intern program, and we're seeing our students do some great things on our campuses. We're excited about this program and recommend approval.
May I ask that at the end of summer, we get a report?
We're gonna do even better. We'll have them come and be presenting certificates for our first class of interns.
Awesome, awesome. I'm very happy with this program.
Ms. Brown, if I may comment, I utilized 3 Los Angeles high school students today for the entire day, and they were phenomenal. We got more stuff cleaned out in the day's time. We filled up 4 trash dumpsters, so it was great.
So they work circles around Matt, what you telling me?
No, don't be fishing on that. No, it was really neat to see the kids helping and doing a great job.
Awesome,
Thank you
awesome.
for allowing
I'd love to see pictures, and I think it's an awesome, awesome thing. All right. Any questions by the board? Comments? Call for the vote? Motion passes. Written reports, 14.1, educational services, Sergio Mendez, Assistant Superintendent of Education Services. 14.2, food services, Rhonda Sullivan, Director of Food Services. 14.3, health services, Priscilla Whitaker, credentialed school nurse. 14.4, human services, Jason Von Allman, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. 14.5, intervention and alternative education, Holly Crivelli, Director of Intervention and Alternative Education. 14.6, maintenance operations and transportation, Matthew McCullough, MOT Director. 14.7, preschool, Virginia Franco, preschool center director. 14.8, special education, Laura Delmas, Director of Special Education. 14.9, technology, Paget Lee, Technology and Systems Director. Future agenda items requested, 15.1, request from board members for future agenda items. Mrs. Austin.
I would like to have the principals from all the sites report what their biggest success and challenges were. Pass it.
Written, verbally, or how?
Oh, verbally, if I want to ask questions. We can do that next time.
Mr. Van Worth.
Nothing.
Nothing from Mr. Morales, but I do like that idea, Mrs. Austin. Ms. Davis.
I just want to piggyback on Miss Austin in that whole good, bad. Can you include like
safety and just how you felt about what you think your vulnerable spot is on your campuses. These nice people that have been included in the earlier item, where they're going to be best used for you, just like an overall, along with her, how is your good and bad? Like, where do you feel we can help you with regards to safety?
If I can bring that back, include your needs. Like you said, how can we help you? What are your needs? What do you see out there? So, maybe a big list. That's what I'm asking for, but it's your opportunity for it. Reyes.
I don't have anything.
All right.
Did you see his face to that eyebrow go up like, oh,
Said needs. All
yeah,
right.
I like these lips.
All right.
Oh, congratulations, by the way, to the newlywed. Oh my gosh, she's not. Sorry.
16.1, adjourned meeting.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Van Wert.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Reyes. Call for the vote.